Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice topic name is Why You Learn Faster When You're Curious. Welcome everyone to this deep dive. We're going to be tackling accelerated learning today, and I want to start with a question for you. Have you ever been caught in one of those digital rabbit holes?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has, I think.
Right. You start by looking up something simple, maybe, the origin of a word, and then an hour later, you've somehow jumped from etymology to the history of the printing press. And then you're reading an economic study from the 17th century.
And the hours just vanish. But you don't feel tired. You feel energized, like you've just absorbed this incredible network of knowledge without really trying.
Exactly. And that feeling, that gravitational pull to just know more, to connect the dots, that is curiosity. And it's exactly what we're here to unpack.
It's the engine. It's the core engine behind, every great discovery and every really successful learning journey.
And our goal today is to show you why curiosity isn't just some, quirky personality trait. It is a genuine superpower for learning things quickly and, maybe more importantly, making them stick.
It really is. In a world with so much information coming at us, it's the best filter we have. It's a motivator. It's a memory booster.
And this isn't just self-help talk.
Yeah.
This is backed up by some pretty solid neuroscience, by psychology, and you can see it play out in history again and again.
That's right. We're going to get into the hows and the whys of it all. How does this actually work? And it all starts really inside the brain.
So let's start there with the neurological engine.
Let's do it. Because this is hard science, It's not philosophy. It's biology and chemistry. When we talk about curiosity, you have to think of it as a brain event, a real measurable event.
A neurological fireworks show is a phrase I've heard.
That's a great way to put it. It's what happens when your mind finds a gap between what you know and what you suddenly urgently need to know. And that show actively primes your brain to absorb information. It makes learning stickier.
Stickier learning. I love that phrase. It perfectly captures that feeling of effortless retention when you're really into a topic. And I assume when we talk about these fireworks, we're talking about one chemical in particular, dopamine.
We have to talk about dopamine. It's often, oversimplified in pop science as just the pleasure chemical. But its role here is much more strategic. When you get curious, your brain releases a significant, sustained surge of dopamine.
And where does it go?
It targets the brain's reward centers, especially a place called the nucleus accumbens.
Okay, but here's a key question for me. How is that dopamine hit different from, say, the one I get from eating a great meal?
Yeah.
Or, scrolling through social media? Those things don't exactly help me learn a new skill.
That is the essential distinction, and it's so important for anyone trying to learn more effectively. The dopamine from curiosity is all about anticipation.
Anticipation of what?
The anticipation of closing that knowledge gap. Your brain is rewarding the process of seeking the answer, the hunt for the solution. It's not a fleeting hit from just consuming something passively.
Ah, okay. So if I'm trying to figure out, say, how a black hole actually works, my brain starts rewarding the effort of reading the complex physics, of watching the documentaries.
Exactly. The anticipation is what makes that whole process, even the struggle, feel motivating and enjoyable. It feels less like work.
So the journey becomes the reward. The brain is basically incentivizing the inquiry itself. That's a brilliant internal mechanism, isn't it?
It's incredibly efficient. And we can see this in action. To move it from theory to, hard evidence, we should look at a landmark study from the University of California back in 2014.
Okay, tell us about it. How did they actually measure curiosity in a lab?
Well, they gave people a series of trivia questions. Some were designed to make them incredibly curious, the kind of question you just have to know the answer to. Others were more mundane, things people were indifferent about.
And they scanned their brains while this was happening.
They did, using fMRI scans to see the brain activity in real time. And the results were, profound. When a participant was in that state of high curiosity, those dopaminergic reward circuits lit up like a Christmas tree.
Of course.
But here's the kicker. That activity then directly enhanced the function of the hippocampus.
Which is the brain's memory center, right?
Yeah.
For long-term memory.
It's the memory formation factory. So, in essence, that flow of dopamine was like a targeted steroid shot for the hippocampus, supercharging its ability to create and store memories.
Wow. So curiosity isn't just about paying better attention. It's literally telling your brain, hey, this piece of information is important, file it away permanently. It's like a neurological highlight pen.
That's a perfect analogy, but it gets even better. This is the real game changer for anyone who wants to learn more efficiently. The study found something they called the transfer effect.
The transfer effect? What's that?
The participants who were in that high curiosity state didn't just remember the answers to the trivia questions they cared about. They also showed much better recall for completely unrelated information they were shown at the same time.
Unrelated? Like what?
Like random faces or scenes that were flashed in front of them while they were waiting for an answer. Their brain, being in that primed, curious state, just soaked it all up.
Okay, wait. Let's really unpack that because the implications are huge.
Yeah.
Because you're saying if I'm deeply passionate about learning the history of ancient Rome.
Yes.
And while I'm researching that, I also have to study, I don't know, something I find incredibly dull, like 18th century tax law for work.
Right.
My state of curiosity about Rome will actually help me remember the tax law better.
That is the compelling conclusion of the study. Your brain, when it's in that dopamine-fueled curious state, becomes a kind of super sponge. It treats all incoming information as valuable. It opens this broad window of heightened learning capacity.
That's incredible. So you don't have to be fascinated by every single detail. You just need to find one thing in a subject that genuinely hooks you.
Find that hook, and it lifts everything else with it. It's a massive, and I think often untapped, efficiency boost. It turns your brain from a passive container into an active, optimized learning machine. It's the ultimate strategic shortcut.
And this goes beyond just memory, doesn't it? It affects our higher level thinking too.
Oh, absolutely. The benefits extend way beyond retention. Curiosity also lights up the prefrontal cortex.
The brain's CEO. The Executive Control Center.
That's the one. It's responsible for focus, for planning, for filtering out distractions. So when you're genuinely curious, that background noise just sort of fades away naturally. You can zero in on what's relevant.
It's like upgrading your brain's RAM. It just optimizes all your cognitive resources for more efficient processing.
That's a great way to think about it. Take learning a new language, for instance, a really challenging task.
Yeah.
If you're just memorizing verb tables, it's a grind. But if you're genuinely curious about the culture or why a certain phrase is used, your brain starts pattern matching the grammar almost subconsciously. You internalize the rules because you're driven by the meaning, not just the mechanics.
So the conscious effort goes down, but the learning speed goes up.
Precisely. And over the long term, being chronically curious actually fosters neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to build new connections.
Let's go back to an analogy we used before. If the brain is a city, learning is like traffic. Without curiosity, you're stuck on congested backroads.
A perfect analogy. But curiosity is the infrastructure department. It's actively paving new high-speed neural highways. It's building express lanes. Information just travels faster and more efficiently.
We should also mention surprise, shouldn't we? It feels like a close cousin to curiosity.
A very close cousin? Maybe an explosive cousin. That aha moment when something genuinely surprises you triggers the exact same powerful dopamine response. Surprise is a massive enhancer for memory, and studies show it even works while you're sleeping, helping to consolidate what you learned.
Which is why those moments of sudden insight are etched so deeply in our memory.
That's why seeking out wonder is really the same as seeking out better retention.
So let's bring this all down to the bottom line. What kind of practical, quantifiable speed gains are we actually talking about here?
Well, they're not small. One study on adult learners found that when they were driven by curiosity, they acquired new skills about 30% faster.
30%.
30% faster. In complex fields like, say, music theory or computer programming, that gain comes directly from the sustained engagement and the superior attention we've been talking about.
In a professional setting, a 30% acceleration in learning a new skill that's a massive competitive advantage.
It's huge, and it really speaks to the power of intrinsic motivation. Think about how this plays out in the corporate world. We've all heard about Google's famous 20% time, right?
Right, where engineers could spend one day a week on their own personal projects, things that just interested them.
Exactly. And that wasn't just, a nice perk to make people happy. It was a strategic move to harness the natural curiosity of their workforce. It was a bet that letting smart people chase their own questions would lead to innovation.
And it paid off. Products like Gmail and AdSense famously came out of that time.
They did. Because the human brain is just fundamentally optimized for creativity and rapid learning when it's allowed to wander with purpose.
So the takeaway for any organization is that if you want your team to upskill quickly, maybe the best investment isn't another mandatory training seminar. Maybe it's creating a culture where people are free to ask, what if?
You're investing in the internal dopamine engines of your employees. And for you, the listener, the neurological takeaway is this. If you're struggling to learn something, if you're feeling that mental fatigue, the solution might not be more brute force repetition.
It might be stepping back and finding the angle on that topic that genuinely sparks your curiosity.
Find that spark, flick on that internal dopamine switch, and let your brain do the heavy lifting for you.
Okay, so we've covered the neurological landscape pretty thoroughly, the chemistry, the brain structures, but let's shift gears. Let's move from the neurons to the mind, the psychological side of this. How does curiosity act as a psychological accelerator?
Well, the psychological power is almost entirely centered on one thing, motivation. Specifically, the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
And most of our lives, especially in school or at work, are driven by extrinsic motivation, right?
Yeah.
We learn to pass a test, to get a promotion, to hit a deadline. It's all external pressure.
And that pressure works to a point, but it's fleeting and it creates a lot of stress. As soon as that external reward is gone, you get the grade, you get the bonus, the motivation just evaporates and the knowledge starts to fade.
But intrinsic motivation, the kind fueled by curiosity, that's different.
It's completely self-sustaining because the reward isn't something external. The reward is the discovery itself. The joy of finding the answer is the fuel that keeps the engine running.
So you don't need a manager or a deadline to keep you going. The unanswered question itself is what pulls you forward. It's a much more efficient use of mental energy.
And when that motivation becomes truly self-sustaining, that's when you can enter that peak psychological state we call flow.
Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept, the flow state, where you're so immersed in what you're doing that time just seems to disappear.
Exactly. It's that optimal zone of engagement where learning feels effortless and happens at an incredibly accelerated rate.
A lot of people see flow as this kind of rare, almost magical state. But you're suggesting curiosity is the key that can unlock it more consistently.
It's the primary trigger. Flow happens when the challenge you're facing is perfectly matched with your skills, but it's curiosity that provides that irresistible hook, that reason to engage with the challenge in the first place.
I see. So curiosity gets you in the door.
It gets you in the door, and then the perfect balance of challenge and skill keeps you there. When you're in that state, your attention is completely undivided. All your cognitive resources are focused on the task. You're learning at maximum velocity.
And we can ground this in some broader psychological theories too, can't we?
We can. A really good framework is self-determination theory, or SDT. It's the idea that we all thrive when three core psychological needs are met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And what's so powerful is that curiosity directly feeds the first two.
Okay, let's break that down. Autonomy first. How does being curious give us a sense of autonomy?
Autonomy is about feeling in control, feeling like you're the one making the choices. When you follow your curiosity, you are, by definition, choosing your own path. You decide which book to read next, which expert to look up, which tangent to explore.
It's your quest. Nobody is assigning it to you.
Exactly. It feels personal, which makes it deeply engaging. And then there's competence.
Which must tie back to what we discussed earlier, the rapid skill acquisition.
That's right. Because you're so driven to find the answer, you learn quickly. You solve the problem, you master the skill, and that success gives you a huge boost in your sense of competence.
Which creates a kind of positive feedback loop.
A very powerful one. Curiosity leads to competence, which builds your confidence, which in turn makes you even more curious to take on the next challenge. That's the engine of accelerated learning right there.
You can really see how this would play out in a classroom setting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The difference is night and day. Curious students aren't just passive recipients of information. They're active seekers. They ask better questions. They connect ideas from different classes. They explore things on their own time. They're not just memorizing facts. They're building their own web of knowledge.
Another critical part of fast learning is resilience. You're going to hit walls, you're going to get stuck. How does curiosity help with that?
It's a huge factor in building cognitive flexibility. That's the ability to switch perspectives and adapt when your first approach doesn't work.
So a curious person doesn't just give up when they hit a roadblock.
Rarely. They see the roadblock not as a failure, but as a new puzzle. An unexpected result is just more data. They don't just memorize the rules, they test the boundaries, they experiment. That leads to a much deeper, more robust understanding of a topic.
And that reframing must be the key to avoiding burnout. Learning becomes a form of play, not a chore.
It completely changes the emotional texture of learning. It transforms an obligation into an adventure. That's why curious people can sustain effort for much longer periods without feeling that mental drain.
This connects directly to Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset, doesn't it?
It's the perfect illustration of it. A growth mindset is about seeing challenges as opportunities to learn, not as threats to your ego. Curiosity is the emotional engine of a growth mindset. It makes you approach the unknown with wonder instead of fear.
Because if your goal is just to find out what happens, then there's no such thing as failure. Only feedback.
Exactly. And we see this in the workplace. Research shows that employees who rate high in curiosity upskill about 25% faster than their peers. They're not waiting to be told what to learn. They're proactively seeking feedback and trying new things because their internal drive is so strong.
So psychologically, curiosity makes learning not just faster, but also more resilient, sustainable, and enjoyable. It's the complete package.
It is. If the neurology provides the engine, the psychology provides the high-performance fuel and the expert driver.
Which seems like a perfect bridge to looking at some of those expert drivers from history. Let's look at the evidence written across the centuries.
Yes, because history is filled with these figures whose ability to learn just seems almost superhuman. But when you look closer, they weren't necessarily born with a different kind of brain. They were just relentless questioners.
And you have to start with the ultimate example, Leonardo da Vinci.
The quintessential Renaissance man. He achieved mastery in so many different fields: art, anatomy, engineering, botany. It's staggering.
And he did it all with very little formal education.
That's the incredible part. He consistently outpaced the most educated specialists of his day. And the driving force was just pure, raw inquiry. He wasn't following a curriculum, he was following his questions.
You can see it in his notebooks, can't you? The sheer volume of work.
Over 13,000 pages that have survived, and they are just filled with observations, sketches, and questions. He's asking, why is the sky blue? How does a bird fly? He dissected human bodies, which was incredibly controversial because he just had to know how the muscles and bones worked to paint them accurately.
He wasn't learning anatomy for a test. He was learning it to solve a problem he cared about in his art.
Precisely. And that's the key to his speed. He accelerated his learning by constantly connecting ideas from different fields. He used his knowledge of art and perspective to design military fortifications. He applied his understanding of hydraulics to the flow of blood in the human body. He saw connections everywhere.
Let's jump forward a few centuries to Albert Einstein. He said something about a holy curiosity, didn't he?
He did. He often said he had no special talent, but was only passionately curious. He attributed his breakthroughs to never losing a holy curiosity.
And his biggest ideas started with very simple, almost childlike questions.
That's what's so fascinating. The theory of relativity, one of the most profound ideas in human history, began with a simple thought experiment he had as a teenager. What would the universe look like if I could ride on a beam of light?
So that imaginative curiosity gave him an intuitive leap that might have taken others decades of just crunching numbers.
It gave him a different starting point. He approached immense complexity from a place of simple wonder. It demonstrates the power of that playful inquiry to get to the heart of a problem much faster.
And it wasn't just men, of course. Marie Curie's work was driven by this same relentless dedication.
Absolutely. Her entire life's work came from an intense wonder about this new phenomenon called radioactivity. She faced incredible obstacles: sexism, a lack of funding, dangerous working conditions. But her curiosity about what made certain elements glow was so powerful that it drove her to master chemistry and physics at an incredible pace.
The need to know was stronger than any barrier.
It was. And we should also talk about someone like Benjamin Franklin, another classic polymath.
Scientist, inventor, diplomat, writer.
And almost entirely self-taught. His genius was rooted in just asking practical questions about the world around him and then trying to solve them. But what's really interesting about Franklin is how he organized curiosity. He created a club called the Junto.
The Junto Club. Tell us about that.
It was basically a group of his ambitious friends who met every week to discuss scientific, political, and philosophical questions. They created a system for shared inquiry. They were fostering a collective curiosity.
So they were creating an environment that accelerated everyone's learning together.
Exactly. They multiplied their learning speed by challenging each other and sharing what they discovered. It's a powerful model.
So the lesson from all these figures, Da Vinci, Einstein, Curie, Franklin, is that their speed didn't necessarily come from innate genius alone.
No, it came from persistent inquiry and, maybe most importantly, their ability to connect disparate ideas. They didn't see knowledge in silos.
And you can see that same pattern in innovators today.
You certainly can. People often mention someone like Elon Musk, who famously talks about teaching himself rocketry by reading textbooks. His intense curiosity about making humanity a multi-planetary species drove him to absorb an incredibly complex field and challenge an entire established industry.
So the evidence is clear. If you want to achieve deep mastery quickly, you have to cultivate that burning question inside you.
That's the common thread that runs through all of them.
Okay, so we've established the deep mechanisms, the brain science, the psychology, the historical proof. Let's pivot now to the most important part, practical application. How can you, listening right now, actually apply this superpower?
Let's start with where we see the biggest returns on curiosity. In education, for example, the difference is just staggering. Traditional rote learning, memorizing for the test, it's slow, and retention is poor.
Because the motivation is all extrinsic.
Right. But when you switch to curiosity-driven methods like project-based learning, where students pursue their own questions, comprehension just skyrockets. There was a Harvard study that found simply encouraging students to ask more questions boosted their comprehension by about 40%.
40%, just from shifting the focus to inquiry.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And in professional life, curiosity is becoming a survival skill. Technology changes so fast. The curious professionals are the ones who are learning about AI or blockchain before it's a mandatory training seminar. They're staying ahead of the curve.
And that scales up to the level of the entire company.
Like, it does. Innovative companies like Pixar intentionally build what they call curiosity cultures. They encourage people to question the way things are done. That's what speeds up innovation. They're always exploring the knowledge gap.
And what about in our personal lives?
It's everywhere. Think about cooking. A curious cook doesn't just follow the recipe to the letter. They experiment. What if I add this spice? What if I use a different technique? They learn the principles of cooking much faster because they're playing.
Or a traveler who learns a language just by talking to locals, driven by a genuine interest in their lives.
Exactly. Even your health. If you're curious about wellness, you experiment with different foods or exercises to learn what works for your body. It leads to faster and more sustainable habits.
So the big takeaway from the neuroscience was that curiosity isn't fixed. It's a muscle we can train. So what are the specific, actionable habits we can build?
First, and this is simple but powerful, just ask why more often. Every single day. Don't just accept your routines. Ask why coffee tastes better when it's fresh ground. Ask why your city's traffic pattern is the way it is. These little inquiries train your brain to look for deeper causes.
Second, you have to seek novelty. Intentionally read a book or listen to a deep dive on a topic completely outside your field. That novelty is what primes the curiosity engine.
Third, and this is more structured, you can set wonder goals. Dedicate, say, 1 hour every week to just diving deep into one question that has been bugging you. No goal other than to satisfy your curiosity.
But I have to challenge that a little bit. If my goal is to master, say, financial modeling for my job, how does spending an hour learning about marine biology actually help me? Isn't that just a distraction?
That's a great question, and it gets back to the transfer effect. That hour you spend on marine biology, a topic you're genuinely excited about, is priming your entire neurological system for learning. Your brain is releasing dopamine, your hippocampus is fired up.
So when I switch back to the financial modeling, which I might find a bit dry,
Your brain is still in that heightened learning state. The boring details of the spreadsheets get a cognitive boost from the excitement of the marine biology. It's a strategic act of brain priming, not a distraction.
I like that framing. A strategic investment in cognitive efficiency. What else?
Use the 5 whys technique. When you face a problem, don't stop at the first answer. Ask why 5 times to drill down to the root cause. It turns every problem into an accelerated learning opportunity.
And finally,
Surround yourself with curious people. It's contagious, their energy, their questions. It will naturally make you more inquisitive. Your environment is a huge factor.
these are great strategies. But what about the barriers? What stops us from being curious?
The biggest one, by far, is the fear of failure, or the fear of looking stupid. We're afraid to ask the dumb question in a meeting. That fear is an instant curiosity killer. It shuts down all those positive brain chemicals.
So the solution is to reframe failure.
You have to. You have to see errors and wrong turns as essential data points. They're not a reflection of your worth. They're just steps on the path to the right answer.
What's another major barrier?
Fixed assumptions. The moment you think you already know everything about a subject, your curiosity dies. You have to constantly challenge your own beliefs with what-if questions. What if the way we've always done this is wrong?
And I imagine our modern world creates its own barriers. all the technological distraction.
It's a massive threat. Constant notifications, endless feeds. They leave no empty space for a question to even form in your mind. Deep inquiry requires a bit of quiet, reflective headspace. So you have to intentionally create that. Set aside device-free time. Go for a walk without a phone.
So to wrap this up, let's just touch on a few final powerful examples.
Absolutely. There was a fascinating study on people with dyslexia. Even with their documented challenges in reading, the participants who were highly curious actually retained information better and faster than their less curious peers. Their motivation helped them overcome a fundamental learning roadblock.
That's incredible. It's like curiosity acts as a kind of cognitive compensation tool.
It does, and we even see this idea being used to build better artificial intelligence. Developers create what they call curiosity algorithms. They design AIs that learn by exploring an environment just to see what will happen without any external reward. They're trying to mimic our own intrinsic drive to understand.
And we see it in schools, too.
Yes. A large school program that focused specifically on boosting student curiosity saw test scores increase by about 20%. When you ignite the wonder, the academic performance follows.
The evidence from every angle seems undeniable. Curiosity is the fastest, most robust path to mastery.
It really is.
So let's synthesize our core takeaway today. Curiosity is far more than a luxury or an interesting behavioral quirk. It is the fundamental, observable key to thriving in a fast-paced, knowledge-intensive world.
From the powerful neurological boosts in your hippocampus that make information stick, and the internal dopamine surge that transforms learning into a joyful quest, to the historical triumphs of polymaths like Da Vinci and the immediate, quantifiable gains in your professional and personal life, the evidence is overwhelming. When you are truly curious, you learn faster, deeper, and with more sustained enjoyment than any other available method.
We have thoroughly explored the mechanics of accelerated learning today. Now, we want to leave you with a final, provocative challenge. We discussed the intentional strategies for cultivating curiosity, the 5 whys, setting a strategic wonder goal, or seeking novelty. Consider not just what you learned in this deep dive, but how you can incorporate one of those specific strategies into your daily life starting tomorrow. What new, unexpected field will your mind compel you to explore next? Go chase that odd, nagging question that you can't get out of your head.
The next great discovery of your lifetime, whether professional or personal, might just be one curious question away.
And finally, if you enjoyed this deep dive into curiosity, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.